Cousin Jared, I've been sick for like 2 weeks now, and I've been sleeping a lot, and there's so much work to do on the NFL model. I feel like I need you to carry this show for me. Can we make that happen?
I'll give it my best shot.
We enter into a Tuesday with no day games again. I don't know.
What is this? What is this?
I don't know. It's like baseball doesn't want to make money. They don't want to get kids involved. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. But another day without day games. Monday's results on the show did pretty well here. We missed out on the Tigers, but the Rangers came through for us in the ninth. And who was the other? We had the other one won, right?
Yes, I do believe the Twins also won.
Guardians and the Twins. Yeah, we got the Twins. We got the player prop again. Nine out of the last 10 on the player props. And so we have a fun little surprise for you with regards to the player props coming today. So that was good. The play of the day, fortunately, did not work out too well for us here on Monday, but I was thinking about this recently, right? The plays of the day have had a higher ROI. They've hit a little bit better than the A grade plays, but the reason we play more of the A grades and why I encourage you to be over in Dub Club to get all those is you have less of that up and down variance. If you just stick to the play of the day, it does well in the long run, but you are kind of subject to some ups and downs just with one play each day. And that happens, unfortunately, but the A grades kind of make it up for it here on Monday. Hopefully the same holds true on Monday. My favorite play of the day is coming in the show later that you stole from us that I think we'll have some good discussion on. But let's get to it. 6:40 p.m. Eastern, Rays and the Marlins. Model loves the Rays. It really is a believer in their offense. Fourth most runs scored in baseball this season, despite half their games being played in either the most or second most or third most, for sure top 5 pitcher-friendly ballpark in the country, right? Seattle's pretty pitcher-friendly. San Diego's pretty pitcher-friendly, especially in early summer at night. And Tampa, I mean, those are probably your 3. I mean, maybe Oakland classifies as 4th, but you got some real pitcher-friendly situation there in Tampa, and yet the fact they're 4th most in runs, that's why their offense grades out so well. It'll be Aaron Civale versus Sandy Alcantara. Civale's ERA definitely whoops Alcantara's this season. We all know that Alcantara's been disappointing relative to last season. The underlying metrics kind of support his 4.16 ERA. He hasn't pitched much better than that. I can't sit here and say that Alcantara's got a 4.16 and, but he's done better than that. It's just been bad luck. He just hasn't been that good this year. But as you've heard me say here on the show before, I think a lot of that has to do with how many innings he threw last year. Yep. And that fatigue tends to wear on the pitcher next season. I think that's what we're seeing. Civale has been a revelation. The underlying metrics suggest he's not as good as that 2.59 ERA. If you look at FIP, it paints a little bit of a bleaker picture. If you look at XFIP, it's really bleak. What that means is he's done a good job at not allowing home runs. Is that skill? Generally speaking, no. Letting guys hit the ball on the ground is skill, but not keeping it in the yard once it's kind of in the air. The difference between a home run and a fly ball is fractions of a centimeter, basically. So you do have a situation where the model likes Alcantara more than Civale, even though the results for Civale have been fantastic this year. Relievers, both sets of relievers are solid. The Marlins moving Robertson out of the closer's role after some disastrous outings from him, yet they still win a bunch of one-run games. So Model still kind of believes in their bullpen, but they've had some closer issues all season, cannot find the guy to do their hanging in there, of course, in the playoff race. So big series here, a little rivalry. Unfortunately, the stands won't be packed quite like it will be for, the 2 Texas teams with the big rivalry coming up here soon, playing meaningful games. It'll be a little bit different than the ones at Florida, unfortunately. Yeah. Model thinks it's pretty much a coin toss game. The Rays should be slightly favored. We have something we haven't talked about here in a while, a wrong team favored game. Marlins are favored. Rays plus 105 gets it barely into an A grade. Model says they win 53% of the time. That the correct price would be minus 113. Cousin Jared, what do you got?
I like backing the Rays at plus odds, and that's one of the that's kind of the long and short of it is good teams like this. I mean, the Rays have won 80 games at this point. Being able to back a team like that at plus odds is not something that you get to do very often. I would agree that, if I were to make my own modifications, I would probably bump up Alcantara's rating 2 points, 3 points, something like that, make him low 80s. And so I think there might be even a little larger advantage on the Rays here than what Sideline has. I know Alcantara did really well last time that he went against the Rays, but I think this Rays offense is too good to get kind of manhandled by him twice in the same season. And you mentioned to me before show that some of the teams that Alcantara has faced multiple times, they have progressively done better against him each time they faced him. So I think this is what you're going to see here. I think the Rays are going to bounce back after they didn't do well against him earlier in the season. And again, just a really good team at plus odds. You don't get many opportunities like this, so I want to capitalize on it.
Yeah, the Braves would be that team that we were talking about there. Yeah, we'd be remiss if we did not mention that Alcantara looked fantastic against this Rays team. About a month ago or so, he looked really good against the Yankees as well. He still hasn't done well against good offenses. The Rays was one of the few performances that he had against a good offense where he looked good. He gave up 3 runs to the Dodgers, another 3 or 4, I think, to the Padres, giving up runs to the Red Sox, the Braves. I mean, he's given up some 3s and 4s to all the good offenses he's faced. Again, with the Rays kind of being that exception. So he did it the first time. Hats off to him last time for shutting down this really good Rays offense. It's not easy to do, especially twice. That was also in Tampa, again, where it's harder to score runs. This one in Miami, which has become a little more pitcher friendly than it was last year. Last year, it kind of played a little closer to neutral, but it still sets up to favor the Rays because for the Rays, almost every game it does offensively. Because of Jared, the Rays are just such a fascinating story to me. If you would have told me that we would be comfortable backing Aaron Savali and Zach Littell and whoever, God knows, that we're backing for the Rays at this point.
Eflin,
is crazy. Like starting the season, you were like, okay, Jeffrey Springs was pretty solid last year, and I like for him to build off that. Drew Rasmussen has been really an under the radar guy that we liked backing the last couple of seasons, that we thought was kind of like Jordan Montgomery, say another, Pablo Lopez, a guy that we've liked to back that people aren't really talking about. McClanahan, we know, is a young guy with a ton of potential. We thought he would be the ace of this staff, and all 3 of those guys are down. Shane Baz is a prospect that we thought might do okay. He's down, and it's like, oh, who cares? Yeah, we're backing Littell, Savali, and Eflin. And it's like, if you would have gone back in time to March and told me that, I'd be like, what bizarro world are we talking about? But they just take pitchers like Littell, who was just a reliever, and they turn him into like a pretty good pitcher. Savali was already doing pretty well with Cleveland, and they bring him in. It's just crazy what the Rays are doing here from a pitching standpoint.
It's an embarrassment of riches, honestly. Definitely one of the most impressive things in sports is how the Rays compete year in and year out.
It's an embarrassment of riches, but it's like they're just like finding these jewels on the street. Like they're not like, it's not like they're inheriting daddy's money, right? Like the Yankees and the Dodgers, that sort of thing, spending money. It's just like they're just like, oh, look here, I just found like a 24-karat diamond right here on the side of whatever, right? And they're just finding these guys off the street. And obviously it's scouting and development or whatever, but I mean it's just incredible what they're doing. Talking about the total in this game, it's at 7.5. The model projects 8.5. In a tight game like this, when the total's at 7.5, I look at it and I always really just want the 7, knowing that that 7's a pretty common outcome. I'd love an over 7. The weather won't change. It's a dome, so we don't have to worry about that in this situation. What are your thoughts on going over? The model clearly just thinks the Rays are going to score off of Alcantara. That's why we're backing them. I think it's kind of why it projects a few more runs. What are your thoughts?
My first thought is wait until the morning and see what the first 5 total is here. That may be something where if Alcantara's maybe getting a little bit too much respect and we do think that the Rays are going to score a few runs off of him, maybe you look at like a first 5 over. I think I might be more comfortable taking a first 5 over depending on what that number is as opposed to the full game over. But yeah, definitely something that would kind of have my attention just because I feel like the connotation is Marlins, low-scoring team, Miami, pitcher-friendly park. I feel like it doesn't exactly feel right, but sometimes those are the best bets you can make, are the ones that don't feel exactly right.
Model projects 4.3 for the first 5. And to get all this information and more is available to you on Dub Club. I give out the cheat sheet with just loads of information if that's what you're looking for. Cousin Jared, my hunch is the first 5 total will be 3.5. The juice is obviously the question. 3.5, would that be something that you might be able to go over on in the first 5?
I would definitely say 3.5. I would even say if I could get 4 at
4 with plus odds.
Yep, yeah. I would do that as well.
Yeah, model thinks 4 most likely outcome, then probably 5 would be the next most likely outcome. So a little bit of an over potential there, which takes us to our pitcher prop of the day, JP France over 17.5 outs. It has nothing to do with the game we're just talking about, but let's talk about this. JP France facing the Red Sox. Last time France faced the Red Sox, it did not end well. Rumor is Dusty Baker went out and talked to him in the middle of the game and said, son, you're going to go 100 pitches. Even if your arm falls off, I don't care how many runs Red Sox score off you, and they scored about 100. A little bit of a revenge spot here for him in this one. I like this one because when you look at those outs, he's gone over this total 72% of the time, and he's gotten to 18 a lot. Notice those first 4 starts. This is when France was first called up to the majors. We didn't really know what to expect out of him, but since then, Dusty's gotten very comfortable with letting him finish innings. He tried to get him through 7 twice and failed with those 220s, but 18, 21, 2020, 18, 21, 18, disaster start, 21, 21, 21, 21, 18, disaster start. That's pretty solid, and he's bounced back pretty well from that. He might blow up, absolutely, and that's very possible in that ballpark. That's how we nailed Javier's prop, because I think he only went 4 innings here on Monday. And again, the Astros still somehow won because then they put up 100 runs. These Red Sox-Astros games have just been bonkers. But assuming he can avoid that disaster start, you have to like his chance to get to 18. Dusty's been very comfortable letting him finish out that 6th inning. Minus 120 is a pretty low price here and a pretty favorable prop. Because, Jared, what do you think?
I like it because France has been, when he's been so good, so consistent all the season, but when he goes bad, he just gets it all out of his system all at once. So once a month, he's going to blow up. But the rest of the time, gravy, sign me up. So I like this play. I think he's going to turn around after that last start. That was just one of those things. Everything that could go wrong will go wrong, and so I think he's going to turn around this time. And I mean, this isn't how sports gambling works, but surely one of these Astros and Red Sox game isn't going to have 20 runs. Like, surely there's going to be a lower scoring game, right?
Part of the reason I like this is that the weather is favorable. Upper 60s, around 70 degrees, cooler, wind blowing in. I'm still projecting 10 runs because it's Fenway, but this is more of a night that it's more possible to have a more normal 5-3 type of ball game because it's not overly friendly to the hitters. And so that's the other reason that you're not saying he's guaranteed to go deep, but he's got a better chance going deep because it's not like it's going to be the weather should not impact the craziness of this game. Last thing on this one, being in Texas, getting the Astros announcers and they're all announcers are homerish to a little extent, right? But they were showing JP France a couple times here over the weekend on the dugout, and they have access to the players that we don't have, and made some comments. And I don't know how true this was, but just about how he was chomping at the bit to get back out there, really going through all the things that went wrong, et cetera. Who knows how much of that was announcer talk and how much of that is real? I honestly don't know. I'm just putting it out there. People can look into that and think about it. You never really know if that's just homers, announcers, right? That sort of thing. But you have to imagine how good he's been. I mean, he's, dare I say, been the ace of this rotation from the full season. Obviously, Fromber was fantastic to start, but the way he's pitched lately, France has been the guy you've counted on all season. And so for him to let the team down so much, this feels like the bounce back spot for a guy who's been the most consistent pitcher on this team, which is insane to think of when you've got Fromber Valdez and now Justin Verlander on the staff. So a good bounce back spot for France here, over 17.5 outs for a prop. And again, if you're looking to get some of this information, Outlier.bet/professor gets you that free 7-day trial. They got a lot of goodies. Check them out. 6:40 p.m. Eastern, Angels at the Phillies. Cousin Jared, the Angels obviously now kind of fallen out of it. I saw the stat that right around the trade deadline, they were like half a game ahead of the Mariners, and now they're like 100 games behind the Mariners. That's not right. They were right there with them, and now the Mariners are like alone in first place in the West, and poor Anaheim, is not. But I think about sports betting a lot like the stock market. And Cousin Jared, you and I are not stock brokers. We are not, we don't trade on the NASDAQ, right? We don't do any of that stuff. But we do know the number one rule of buying and selling stocks, right? And that is the best time to buy is what?
when everybody else is selling, when things look bad. Yeah,
exactly. And the best time to sell, of course, is when everybody's too excited about it. So the idea with that being, we took the Angels here recently on an A grade play, and they got it done for us this last weekend. I don't think we should be afraid to take the Angels. They still have a good offense, even without Trout. Still grades out better than average, especially now with Logan O'Hoppe back. That really matters. Getting hitting production from your catcher helps a lot. I think this offense is better than the Phillies. Starting pitcher wise, is pretty neutral, and I know that might surprise you if you look at the ERAs, but that's again why we look at the underlying metrics. The FIP for these guys is pretty similar. XFIP, Lorenzen is a little bit better. So for Lorenzen, definitely the better pitcher, but it's not nearly as much as the ERAs would suggest here. And of course, the other thing to note, Tyler Anderson, a lefty, the Phillies project worse against a lefty, closer to league average, while the Angels project better than average against a righty. So the difference between these two offenses for the starting pitching is actually larger than a full standard deviation. So the Angels' edge here is kind of stronger based off the handedness of the pitchers. That's going to minimize some of the pitcher advantage that the Phillies have with Lorenzen. Obviously, the bullpen edge goes to the Phillies. The Phillies are home and should be favored. Model says they win this 57% of the time, but that leads you to a price of 133. That makes plus 147 a decent investment here on the Angels, a B grade dog. Because of Jared, we're talking about we need some more dogs on the show. We need some more dogs in general. The model's got a little favorite heavy, so I like taking a dog here. Doesn't mean they're going to win, but might be worth a little shot here at plus odds.
Yeah, as a Coastal Carolina football coach once said, I don't want any cats in here. I need some dogs. So here's the thing with the Angels. Obviously, it hurts having Trout back on the IL, but offensively, still a very good team. And, you got Ohtani in the middle of the lineup. That's great. You mentioned O'Hoppe coming back. I want to talk about Nolan Schanuel because this guy got drafted earlier in the summer, already up for the major league
2 months ago.
Yeah, and this guy is an on-base machine. Hasn't shown much power yet, but I mean, he was playing for Florida like a couple of months ago. Yeah. But he is an on-base machine, and if you get a guy who is just consistently getting on base in front of Ohtani,
ahead of Ohtani,
and the rest of this Angels lineup, I like it. Sideline projects this total to be over 9, so sign me up. If you think that this is going to be a high-scoring game, I want to be on the side of the Angels and not the Phillies in this one, and that's really kind of what it comes down to. If we're going to get into an offensive game, I want to be back in the Angels.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. He's part of the reason why the Angels offensive projection has jumped. Him and O'Hoppe came back, or I think we kind of realized he was a good hitter. I think early on it was a little bit, who knows what we're getting from him, right? But, him kind of establishing himself as an actual major league hitter, which is crazy to think of, and O'Hoppe coming back kind of happened about the same time that Trout went back down and took that offense kind of back up to a pretty good level still. Imagine if you put Trout in the middle of this lineup, how good this offense would be. Unfortunately, he just can't stay healthy. And unfortunately, on the pitching side, Ohtani just can't stay healthy. And unfortunately, their bullpen is still terrible. Because of Jarrett, the first 5 price, and the reason I'm talking about this is because this is really another angle we should be looking at this game. There's no market out for it now, but the first 5 price, according to the model, should be Phillies minus 122. So we are looking for plus 140 on the Angels for an A grade, plus 129 for a B grade. That's for the first 5 market. And I have to imagine we're interested in jumping on that if the prices are good, because then we also get to remove the bullpen factor from this, where the Phillies definitely have a huge edge. I'm assuming you're in agreement with that.
I am in agreement with that. And Schanuel has 8 runs in like 5.5 games. I mean, it's just crazy whenever you get a guy that just gets on base in front of a lineup like this. Anyway, it's crazy.
I mean, that puts some hashtag on pace for like 200 in a full season, right? So, I mean, he can break records left and right.
You heard it here first.
And that takes us to a pitcher prop of the day that has nothing to do with this game, too. Let's have some more fun. Jose Quintana, over 17.5 outs at only minus 108. Look, I kind of lather, rinse, repeat of what I just said. Nice night in New York. You're talking about 70 degrees, slight breeze blowing in. You have a really pitcher-friendly ballpark. He's been going 18 more than not. He's hit this 5 out of 7 times. I mean, I don't really know what else there's to say. This should be pretty heavily juiced and or put at 18.5. I think we all kind of expect him to get about 18. So I don't know why we're at minus 108. Because, Jared, what are your thoughts on this one?
Sure. I like not runs when the weather is right in a park that suppresses runs. So I have no issue with this.
Rangers a little bit worse against a lefty. They're pretty left-handed heavy. That means there's really no rush to pull Quintana, and that helps us out even more. So again, part of how we're pulling on this is all the metrics that you see on Outlier.bet and looking at the weather, looking at the pitcher grades, looking at where we like the totals, all things that you can get if you're with us on Dub Club. So that combination of the information you give on Dub Club plus Outlier.bet, you can do the same things I'm doing, and you too can hit 9 out of 10 in a row player props. So check that out. 9:40 p.m. Eastern, A's and the Mariners. This is the one I was mentioning is my favorite play of the day here. I mean, this is a massive mismatch, and that's what's going to happen when you throw Ken Waldichuk versus George Curry, who is every bit as good as that 3.28 ERA, and Waldichuk probably almost as bad as that 6.05 ERA. He's still starting games as opposed to having an opener because that's a choice, I guess. He also plays his games in pitcher-friendly ballparks, and it has not mattered. I mean, this is a mismatch everywhere you look. The smallest gap you have is offensively. And the A's, while we talked about their offense not being terrible, is still not as good as the Mariners, who, again, while they've been hot and cold, their numbers are suppressed because of the environment that they play in. Not a bad offense. They've shown that here in this hot streak. I cannot believe this, but this is a pretty high probability here for a baseball game. 84% for Seattle says it should be minus 544. Now, again, remember, don't be alarmed by these numbers out here because, again, when we get to this part of the probability distribution, 1% moves the number a ton, whereas around even money, 1% moves the line a nickel. Here, 1% can move it like 30 cents or something. So rounding error in terms of probability out here really affects the projected price. So when we're out here at this part of the distribution, we do want to be a little bit more careful. We know we're dealing with outlierish territory. We know that if we're off on the probability by an extra couple percent, that price is going to drop like a whole dollar, as opposed to where if we're off or on even money, it's only going to move 10 cents or something. So that we have different rules to play with out here. But this is a situation, and I know people will say, the odds are too high. The Mariners are not worth an investment. But look, the math is the math. If the Mariners win anywhere near 84% of the time, even if you only think they win 80% of the time, they have to win some percentage of the time. Imagine they play this game 100 times. How many do they win? You can come up with your own number. You can use your own model. You can use someone else's model. You could aggregate models. You can just trust my model, whatever you want to do. But there is a number out there, and that number converts to a price, and that makes the price a good investment, whether you like it or not. I'm sorry, you don't have to like it. The math is the math.
Yep.
And so with that in mind, we are going to take the Mariners at minus one at minus 211 as an A grade. The money line price for the A grade, as you can see on screen, is minus 426. It's actually minus 280. Easy A grade. Run line, same situation. The A grade run line price is minus 169. Model says the Mariners cover the run line 2 out of 3 times. The current price is minus 125. Minus 125 is a steal on this run line as well. The Mariners are currently up here in the 7th inning, 7-0. I expect a similar situation. I've coded in to go with a -1. However you want to play it. You want to be a little more aggressive, take the run line. You want to be more conservative on the money line. It doesn't really matter. It's still a smart investment, mathematically speaking. And that's what cannot be argued with, assuming that you can agree with the Mariners winning 80% or more of the time. If you don't like this bet, the only reason I'm allowing you to say you don't like this pick is if you think the Mariners do not win 80% of the time. That's the only, if you say that, I can respect that. Otherwise, even though the odds are dumb, it still makes sense to back the Mariners in one way, shape, or form. Cousin Jared, what's your take?
My take is, I feel like, we've kind of established here that I have some rules and I generally follow the rules that I have. And it's partially because I think that works for me. And it's partially because I want to not think as much. And if I have rules, then I don't have to think because I just kind of do what the rules say. So we have talked on this show many, many times that if there is a double-digit total, I am fine taking the run line because there's lots of games. One run's going to mean less in a game with double-digit runs. But there's an exception to every rule. And this game might be that exception where I would be comfortable playing the run line with the Mariners when you have got such a starting pitching mismatch and you have the Mariners with one of the best bullpens in baseball. Yes, there is 100% a way that the Mariners could lose this game, or many ways they could win this game by 1 run. But when you can talk about, laying 1 run at minus 211, or you could lay a run and a half at like minus 135. There's even some minus 130s out there. And so this is a situation, me personally, I'm going to be playing this on the run line. It's just like the perfect combination of things, not to mention like how well the Mariners have been playing. It's just a perfect combination of things that this is an instance where you need to use logic and just be reasonable. And I think taking the run line here is very reasonable, even though it may not fall into my category of rules I normally have. There's an exception to every rule. In this game, I think it's an exception for me.
Absolutely. And I cannot agree more with what you said there. If I can encourage people, especially if you're kind of struggling with bankroll management, if you feel like you're a little too up and down, coming up with a set of rules that you follow is I really strongly recommend it. Again, I mentioned I have this rule where in these situations, I'll just play the -1, even if the odds are a little bit higher. It's my personal preference to play it in that direction, whether you have rules, because Jared, you've talked about that. You've talked about the threshold also run -200. You've talked about the run line being doubled. You've talked about kind of your process and it doesn't have to be written down, but just having a process, it really helps. The other reason, viewer, if you're, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but if you're not sold on it, the other reason the rules helps, overthinking and then thinking the what if game is so frustrating. And if you're doing this night in and night out, you're going to go crazy. I can tell you because I've done it, right? And I'm sure, Cousin Jed, I'm sure you've been there too. And this is why we develop these processes. Because then you have a process, you kind of have a pattern. And then if it doesn't work out for you, if the Mariners win by 1 tomorrow, you say, hey, that's okay. I had a process that I followed and I'll get them next time, right? And you think about the long term. If you're kind of just randomly doing something, you're gonna get in your head, and it's just mental health is so important in this, because you got to stay sane during this grind, because the bad beats can be frustrating enough. So having a process makes a lot of sense. Cousin Jared, I completely agree. If you want to take the run line, I totally approve. My official pick -1. If you want to take the money line, be a little bit safer. If you want to parlay it, again, my recommendation on parlays, don't do a 10-team parlay. Don't put this in every money line parlay you do. Find one other favorite you really like, parlay them with that, make that your one bet on both games. Don't put those games in anything else. That's another way to play it. First 5 run line, another way to play it. If you're interested in that, model says the Mariners -0.5 and the first 5 should be priced at -168, and an A grade is -145. That's another way to play it. Now, of course, at that point, unfortunately, you're missing out on the good Mariners bullpen and the bad A's bullpen. Mariners bullpen is still kind of struggling over the weekend. They're going to figure it out. I don't know when. Maybe the A's is the cure, right? Maybe facing the A's is the cure to that. I don't know. They still have good pitching. They're just, some hiccups. Maybe it's just the curse of the Royals that we're kind of, hanging in there with them.
Maybe so.
But the Mariners, again, a strong play. Again, even if the odds aren't that good from a mathematical standpoint, assuming we all agree that they are really likely to win, they make sense to play in one shape or form. The only way it doesn't is if you don't think they're that likely to win and you think the A's are higher likely to win. And that's possible. If you come to that conclusion, there are other models that are going to come to that conclusion. Baseball's random. My model doesn't think that specifically, because the combination of players involved in this game just really tilts the scale in an almost overwhelming fashion towards the Mariners. This is maybe the second highest favorite I think we've had all season here at 84%. You don't see numbers like this often because it's really unlikely in baseball. Baseball's too random for this, which takes us to a pitcher prop of the day. Look at that. We got another one here, giving you a 3 today. Justin Steele, over 17.5 outs at -190. This one is kind of similar to the ones we talked about before, but also kind of different. Here's the similarities. Cool night, upper 60s, slight breeze blowing in. The difference is that Justin Steele is a bona fide ace, as opposed to the other two pitchers. As much as we talk about France being kind of the ace, de facto ace of the Astros staff, and he's been consistent, he was a guy who I don't think he'd thrown an inning of Major League ball before this season.
Nope. No.
Quintana has been hurt and maybe washed up and washed back ashore by now, right? Those two guys have a little more question marks, and that's why we're getting better odds. You combine Steele with look at all of those 18s. I mean, he is constantly getting through 6. That's the way they treat him. He's the ace of that staff, especially now with Stroman on the IL. He needs to go out there and get him 6, and he does. The weather's right for it. And again, another beautiful situation. The Brewers worse against a lefty. So there's no rush to pull them. You're paying a little bit of a steeper price here at minus 190. But this one, while similar to the others in that I think gets to 18, the probability of this one is a lot higher. You can see on screen throughout the course of the season, he's gotten there 70 whatever percent of the time. The break-even point for minus 190 is more like 65%. There's absolutely a 70 to 80% chance somewhere in that ballpark that he can get there, given the weather and given the Brewers' weakness against a lefty. Sets up perfectly. Steeper price, because in Jared, if you have to just pick one that's almost certain, all but certain, everything we can say but certain to hit, this is it. Because in Jared, any feedback from you?
This is my favorite one of the night, but I kind of like all the options that you laid out here. And for me, it feels like 2 out of these 3 win.
I was thinking the same thing. 2 out of 3, maybe all 3. And that's, I think I said that yesterday for the 3 games that we had, and I said 2 of the 3, maybe all 3. Sure enough, we got 2 of the 3. So you make all 3 of these, 2 of the 3 win. You can't lose money that way. The other thing with these pitcher props, just something to think about, if you scale the wagers kind of like we do with our normal picks, you can kind of take the hurt out of some of this juice. And that's something to think about with player props, because you're getting some big plus odds, some big minus odds. And that scaling where it adds up to a certain amount can kind of, again, take a little bit of the sting out of that. And on this one, instead of betting 1.9 units to win 1 unit, do something where you bet like 1.5 to win 0.7 or whatever it may be. And that way, you might win a little bit less, but you're taking a little bit of that sting off on that big juice. That's obviously something we're all concerned with. So just something to think about there. And again, you can do this at Outlier.bet/professor, free 7-day trial if you haven't heard that enough. Cousin Jared, that is our show. Whew. 3 games, 3 props, lots of things for people to like on Tuesday, lots of things for people to think about all day while we're not watching baseball.
Yep.
Maybe watching tennis.
Yeah. And it's, again, this is nonsense, people. It's the last gasp of summer here. Why do we not have day baseball?
It's almost like they're encouraging us to be thinking more about football.
I mean, no offense, you don't have to push me hard.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks for tuning into this episode of Picks with the Professor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can ensure the sports content provided on this channel dropped right into your feed. If you haven't checked out the College Football Week 1 episode, make sure you do that. Back again tomorrow with more baseball content. But until then, as always, best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.